And good morning, everybody, and welcome to Local Issues, Real People, the public affairs program of Piedmont Communications. I'm J.D. Slade, and today we've got an interesting show because you've heard lots about race relations. And, again, you hear things like symptomatic bigotry. My guest this morning is he's going to be a very, very educational person here because we're going to teach you something that you may not know. The group, the NAACP, you've heard the name. You know that it stands for the National Advancement for the Association of Colored People. It was formed back in 1908. Yeah, see, again, I did my history here. Again, but the NAACP was set up by a multitude of people. Some people who were abolitionists who were, of course, decided that slavery was wrong. And then there were free black people who were also part of it. Now, let's move up 100 years. Yes, sir. The NAACP. Very strong organization. And my guest this morning is Dr. Uzziah Harris. Of course, he is the head of Culpeper branch NAACP. Dr. Harris, thank you for joining me, first off.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it, Brother JD.
All right, so let me ask you, Dr. Harris, first off, give me the basic tenets of the NAACP today.
Basic tenets of the NAACP. Quite frankly, our job is to fight for the educational, economic, social, and political justice and equity of all persons.
We were talking before the program because, again, if you go the wrong way, you end up getting bad results. If you go a violent way, you're going to end up with violent results. The NAACP's cause says, listen, we need to start a little higher. We need to start at legislative because if you change the legislature, you change the culture.
Yes. Listen, and Martin King knew this, that you cannot legislate someone's heart. So let's get that straight. We know that we can't change people's hearts by legislation. However, legislation provides accountability. Legislation provides a framework so that even if the heart isn't what it's supposed to be, we're still governed by principles of equity and justice that make the playing field fairer for all of us.
So, the current group of NAACP, where do you represent?
So we represent Culpeper County, Rappahannock, and Madison.
There is, like I say, it's hard to believe because, I have been in this area now over 50 years.
Yes, sir.
And I have seen many, many changes in the years that I've lived as a youth. Because when I first came here in 1971 or 70, integration hadn't happened but 2 years earlier.
Yes.
And there was still a lot of very bad feelings with people. As we've gone on, times have changed, but some things still don't. There's still, it's like you got to call it what it is, inherent racism. And it is affecting, and you're finding stories every day where people of color are being assaulted. And now it's gone to the Asian community as well. So if you're different, you got a problem.
Yeah, well, we have to understand that, like you said, this is historical, right? When you say it's going to the Asian community, remember, it was after World War II, during the internment camps of American citizens. Now, the difference is those persons were given reparations. The indigenous people of this country were given reparations. This country has yet to fully make whole African-American people for the crimes committed against them generationally. Good case, Tulsa. We just came off the cusp of Tulsa's 100-year anniversary.
Yes.
And while they are building a multi-million-dollar tourist area to memorialize the events of Tulsa, Oklahoma, not one descendant of persons who were a part of that 40 to 45 square block community has been restored. The businesses, the schools, the airport, the millionaires that were there, and no one has enough apathy, humanity to say these people are owed.
At the one time, that, of course, was the Black Wall Street.
Yes, sir.
Again, and there were millions of dollars generated and then just taken away. Just taken away. All right, I'm going to go and change course real quick here because I asked you a couple of questions before we started. The NAACP has fought for civil rights for all people, actually, all people. Here in the last few years, we've come up with a splinter group, Black Lives Matter. Now, wouldn't you think that, if we're going to call it like it is, that the NAACP has always meant Black Lives Matter?
Absolutely. And I think that part of what people don't understand is the reason you have the creation of multiple groups like Black Lives Matter. First of all, when I think of BLM, I think of the original Black Liberation Movement.
There you go.
But,
That's right.
but enough said about that. People have to understand some of the same people who were hung, their families are still alive. Some of the same people who were brutalized, they're still alive. And so some of the same people who were lynching are still alive. And they raised children, and they're still alive. And so we want to push it underneath the rug. These issues are still prevalent, and we have to continue to fight for them because, as you said, the NAACP has fought for equality for all groups. Well, let's look at it in a larger context. As Black people have fought for civil rights in America, America has become more American because it's been forced. She's been forced to live up to her creed. And so while some people would call any group that looks for equality of minority people or people who are marginalized as either socialists or communists or agitators in general, we come to realize this type of movement is what truly makes this country what it's supposed to be. Talking about make America great again. America is great when America lives up to its promise.
And that is the big deal. That is one of the things that a lot of these groups are. They're just trying to hold America's feet to the fire because they've heard the words, they've heard the rhetoric, and nothing has come of it. So again, and you're trying not to get into the violent stages. You don't want the marches and where they turn into violence. We can march and we can make a point, but we don't have to tear up. And this is the thing that bothers me about, again, when we get into those situations, why tear up your own neighborhood?
Well, I want to push back on that, Brother JD, just a little bit because a study just came out that said when they looked at and researched the movements of this past summer related to the BLM banner, that they were overwhelmingly nonviolent.
Yes.
And so I want to push back on the notion that BLM marches are inherently violent and January 6th insurrections are inherently patriotic. There's something wrong with that narrative in our country.
There really is because, 6 months earlier, Black Lives Matter had a rally. It was peaceful, but you'd have thought that they were declaring World War III, whereas on January 6th, you didn't see all that. As a matter of fact, there was a lot of fear from these patriots, these loyal Americans who are taking over our capital, and they're still not going to get any answers. I sometimes just play let's pretend.
Yes, sir.
What if the the rally 6 months before January 6th had happened on the Capitol steps? I'm afraid that there would have been a lot more bloodshed. I'm afraid that there would have been a lot more hysteria, and unfortunately, we seem to have forgotten that, yes, BLM did have peaceful marches. And it wasn't BLM that decided they were going to destroy things. It was those people who didn't like the BLM movement. Again, it's really sad because I was 8 years old when Dr. King made his I Have a Dream speech.
Yes, sir.
And I believe that the thing that makes me the sickest is I'm 65 years old now. Yes, sir. And we haven't seemed to have gotten any farther other than just getting more advanced with technology than we were back 50 years ago when Dr. King made that speech.
Well, again, and I think that it's important for all of us to look at the full gamut of history. So his 63 I Have a Dream speech pales in comparison to his mentality in 68 before he was assassinated, where he says, I'm afraid that I've taken my people into a burning building. That Martin King understood in some of his last interviews that, okay, civil rights, voting rights, these things are extremely important. But if we don't have economic power, if we don't have strong political base, if we don't have autonomy as communities, then we are still left in a position, as he said, where it's a cruel jest to tell a man to pull himself up by his bootstraps and he doesn't have any laces.
Yes.
So we have to understand the more things perceivably change, the more things, if we're not careful, will stay the same.
Dr. Harris is, again, my guest on Local Issues, Real People, and we're talking about the NAACP. All right, let's bring it a little closer to home. How many members do you have?
We are at right under 90 members, right around 85 members now. We've been up to 100 in the past. I perceive that by the end of the summer, we're going to push to get to 150. I mean, that's a goal of mine, just to increase membership, and not just increase membership, but increase active membership.
Exactly.
So members who are not only paying members, because the dues do help us in terms of the scholarships we provide. They do help us in terms of the community events that we partner with, being able to help people put on community events. But active members who are willing to walk down to town council, active members who are willing to lobby or send emails to the board of supervisors. We had situations earlier this year where we were able to, on two different fronts, situation in Madison with the changing of a road name, situation in Culpeper with the renaming of a lake that's still up in the air, as you know. But you have to have people to have feet on the ground and be able to actively touch other people, because this is, in fact, a movement for what I believe is the soul of our nation.
And that, again, you say that with such conviction, and I actually believe this. Okay, so let's bring it a little closer. What are we lacking? Because I know that by the time this program airs, you will have had a Zoom conversation about law enforcement,
yes, sir,
and so on and so forth. What do you feel law enforcement's place is in Culpeper? I'm not talking about the nation. I'm talking about in Culpeper, because it's like, I know a number of these fellas and ladies, and they are committed to this community.
Yes.
And more so than in a lot of areas that I've lived.
Yes.
So what do you see as far as the bridging the gap between?
Okay. So again, we represent 3 jurisdictions or locales. We represent Rappahannock, we represent Madison, we represent Culpeper. And Culpeper, in and of itself, you know that there are 2 law enforcement entities that kind of work together. There is the county sheriff's department, right, and there is the town police department, both led by men with the last name of Jenkins. Both of them have very, to me, clear philosophies on how to engage with people. The Culpeper Town Police, they have for 6 years in a row received accommodations on their community policing, on how they engage with the community, on how they do what it is they do. Our sheriff's department, we still have a ways to go, quite honestly. We need to work toward better dialogue between the sheriff's office and communities of color, and that's just the bottom line. And so we're going to continue to work for that. We're going to continue to push for accountability across the board. Because see, here's the thing. People think just because you talk about issues that divide us, that you're divisive. The only way
to get those issues cleared up is to attack them head on.
Absolutely.
I mean, you can't run away from it. And unfortunately, these are things that we are seeing every day. And as people of color, yes, we see things a lot differently than the other folks. Yeah. And so, again, and yeah, I would love to believe that we could be that rainbow coalition and everybody will be happy and holding hands. That's not going to happen. I'm going to be realistic about it. But I do think that for someone to take a look at me and say they don't like me because of my skin color, mm-hmm, it's pretty sad, because I didn't have anything to do with that.
So this is what makes our NAACP so beautiful. Right? So when you look at our NAACP, it is much like the historic genesis of the NAACP. Right? Most people don't know that the NAACP was multiracial in its genesis from the very beginning.
In 1908, it was set up by abolitionists who believed that slavery was wrong, and by freed slaves who then said, "Hey, listen, we got to get this together, make us stronger." That's where it started. And where did we lose? Where did we lose the track?
Well, we're fortunate, our particular branch, in that we are every bit multi-generational, every bit multiracial, every bit multi-party or nonpartisan. So we have people that represent different parts of the political spectrum. And part of what we have to understand in today's America is that we can disagree on certain things and still work toward common goals.
Yes.
We've become far too tribalistic. We've become a society where I'm right, and by virtue of me being right, you're have wrong. To be wrong.
Yes.
And we've lost the sentiment that we are all Americans. My father was in the military, and I remember going over to Germany, where I spent my middle school years in West Germany. And it was very interesting living on the military base that was surrounded by what we called the host country. It didn't matter what color we were. It didn't matter if my dad was Army, your dad was Air Force. We were all Americans. And today, we have an America that pits itself against itself.
That is amazing. It really is.
So we're the United States in name, but we are divided in actuality. And part of what the NAACP wants to do, and it continues to endeavor to do, is where it sees those inequities, where it sees injustices, where it sees wrongs, to attempt to prick the conscience of America, to go to the halls of legislation, to push for better public policy, so that while we're waiting for the hearts of men to catch up,
yes,
the code will allow for better opportunity.
Like I said, as I'm getting older, it's like I'm finding myself less tolerant with ignorant stances.
Yes, sir.
Just put it that way. I do. Again, I guess my mom was one of those who, look, once I've gotten older, it's like, look, I've paid my dues. I've done everything I could to make this place a better place than when I found it. Mm-hmm. And that's all that you really can do. But let me ask you, Dr. Harris, what is the one thing that you would like to see happen in Culpeper?
So I think that from an educational standpoint, and I myself am an educator, we have a number of committees in the NAACP. We have political action, we have education, we have a number of committees. What I would like to see is educationally there be a concerted effort at teaching equity, at teaching hard history. And I want to, at this point, stop for just a second and make sure that people don't confuse what I'm saying with a term like critical race theory, right? Which seems to be a hot button issue. I'm not going to give my stance on that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the basics that allow all of us to understand the contributions of all of us, that allow all of us to understand the true nature of our history. That's not anti-American. That's taking a good hard look at ourselves so that we don't repeat the same mistakes. I'm talking about an inclusivity that says you might be 1 out of 20 students in my classroom, but your voice matters. And we're not going to mute your voice just because you're one of the few and we're one of the many. So in counties surrounding Culpeper, and it's going on in Madison even now, they're talking about equity. Charlottesville, they're talking about equity. We have to begin to talk about equity, which is different from equality. Okay? So equality, you get $2, I get $2.
Yes.
That's equality, right? But if I've left you $10 in the hole through actions of my own doing, then you getting $2 and me getting $2 is equal, but it's not equitable and it's not just.
Because I'm still in the hole.
Because you're still in the hole.
Thank you.
And so for 244 years of institutional slavery, another 100 years or so of Jim Crow, going through the civil rights movement, when you talk about 400 years of systematically mass incarcerating, redlining, not providing the same financial safeguards as it relates to loans,
the
education.
imprisonment rates, you take a look and you see how inequitable they are.
Yeah. And this is not, and let's talk about prison for just a second, right? Because some of it clearly, when a black man can go to jail more often and longer for the exact same crime, and then it take twice as long for that black man to be employed again. There are studies that say that my white brothers and sisters who have been incarcerated are just as likely to get an employment as my college-educated black brothers and sisters. And so when you look at the numbers on this thing, what that helps us understand is whether implicit or explicit, whether conscious or unconscious, we still have a racism sickness in our country that affects every single segment of our society. And for those of us who know this to be true, whether you be white, whether you be black, whether you be gay, whether you be straight, whether you be so-called liberal or so-called conservative, all of us who have a vested interest in seeing this country be a better place, we must stop being complicit, i.e. being quiet, and we must assert and insert ourselves into the public discourse, and we must use our resources to do what it takes to right this wrong. It's not going away, Brother JD.
Let me tell you something, Dr. Harris. You know, I feel like I've been able to stand up for people of color in this area for a long time because I'm in a position that normally was not meant for me. I sharpened my skills because I had people who were concerned and wanted to make sure that I could succeed at this. And as a result, I think I'm one of the best at it.
Bless you. Yeah.
Because because I bring in kids, because it's like I'm looking at the kids as the future. They're not going to have the same advantage that I did to get into this business. But it's like if a kid comes to me and says, hey, I'm interested, come on in. I'm taking you in because it's my job. It is my obligation and it is my solemn duty to make sure that I pass along the things that I know and that I've been able to learn to that next generation, because there aren't going to be any more J.D. Slades, I guarantee you. No. Because, like I say, we are rare breeds.
Yes, sir.
But it's like if they can learn that instead of having a chip on your shoulder, that it's like, I do believe that hard work does pay off. And Dr. Harris, you've got to as well, because you got a doctorate, which means you worked on it. I just wish that more and more people would just take the chips off their shoulders. And if you want to get into dialogue and you want to talk about this, let's talk about it, because we can get a lot more done by sitting across the table. And even if you don't agree with me,
yes, sir.
You know, again, the ability to express that is necessary. What if somebody wants to get a hold of the NAACP? Maybe they want to get involved because of what we're talking about. How do they do it, Doc Harris?
So they can go to our Facebook. We have a Facebook page, NAACP. Culpeper branch. We are branch 7058. They can go to our website, www.NAACP Culpeper. They can go to our IG. And so
I want you to give every bit of information so that people will know, because it's like the reason that I took this show is because I really wanted to do this program.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So again, I'd say reach out to us. Go to our website. Go to our website and shoot us a message. Go to our Facebook page and just send us a comment. Become a part of the group of people who are working to make those type of changes. Again, we are branch 7058 with a Culpeper NAACP branch. And so if you go and just do a simple Google search in the window, you're going to find NAACP Culpeper. You're going to be able to find us. You're going to be able to get in contact with us.
I had a chance to talk with Frank Reeves yesterday.
My buddy, and Vice President. We thank
him. I told him, I said I was going to be talking with you today, and he said, "Well, yeah, he's a fine young man." And it's like, again, so there you go. You've made your bones here, and again, if there's one thing that we can take away from this conversation, what would you like it to be, Dr. Harris?
That there are organizations and people that perhaps you may not understand, but if you take the time to understand, you'll realize we have much more in common than we have apart.
I get so tired of people pointing out our differences first instead of our samenesses.
That's right.
I mean, it's like, because we all bleed.
Yes.
We all got hearts. We all got eyes. We've all got all of the members. So why in the world would the shade of my skin make such a world of difference? I've been in this business a long time, and it's like, and before Facebook and my picture was plastered all over the internet, I had the ability to be anonymous.
Yes, sir.
And if I would go out and it's like, and they'd say, okay, J.D. Slade's going to be out there. It's like, and somebody go, hey, where's J.D. Slade? You know what they were looking for.
Yes.
They had 6 foot blonde
yes,
hair,
yes,
blue eyes,
yes.
Again. And then here they come, meet a little fuddy-duddy here. But, I have been able to teach people. I have been able to reach people who understand that I do this because I can.
Wow.
If I didn't, it's like I would not be worth my salt. If I let the talent that God gave me just rot, then it's like I need to just close my eyes and take a dirt nap. Yeah. So I've been very, very insistent on making sure that I make my points, and without being radical and without being violent, without being, and subjugating people to rhetoric. Again, it's like, and people, I think, have come to understand that they kind of like JD. Yeah, it's like somebody, they might not want their daughter to date him, but it's like we can sit down and have a beer and talk, again. And I think that is probably the strongest thing that I have been able to accomplish because, like I say, I can remember when, and it wasn't that long ago, and that, again, that somebody would call me something that I wouldn't want to be called.
Yes, sir.
And think that it was all right to do so. Again, fortunately, I think we are slowly getting away from that, but we're not doing it fast enough because, like I say, we're all in this together. And if we don't all stand together, we're certainly going to fall.
Amen.
All right, I'm going to give you an opportunity to make your last plea here because, like I say, I wanted to do this program, Dr. Harris, because I think it's important. And I think that the NAACP, that people do not understand all the things that you're involved in.
Okay, so we are nonpartisan. We have a multiplicity of political philosophies embedded in our organization. We are multiracial. It is not an all black and all white or anything of that nature. We are an organization that wants political, economic, educational, and social equity. Not just equality, but equity. Join us in this fight because I'm a biblical man. I believe that 1 sends 1,000 fleeing, 2 sends 10,000. And so the more people we have fighting this fight, the better and more successful that we can be.
And don't let anybody tell you can't, because there were people who told me that I couldn't do this. I proved them damn wrong, man.
Yes,
It's like 50 years later, I'm still sitting here, and I'm proud of that. And I'm also proud of the organization because it's like they wanted me to do this show because we are all in this together. Dr. Uzziah Harris, thank you so very much for being on the program, and know that you've got an open invitation. Whenever you need me, you just give me a call, and I'll help you out.
Thank you, Brother JD. I really appreciate it.
Again, the NAACP has been around for over 100 years, and they're still going strong, and they're still working in neighborhoods. If you get the chance, make it your business to do so. Get a hold of Dr. Harris or get a hold of Frank Reeves. Get a hold of the NAACP and find out what this NAACP is all about. Doc Harris, thank you.
Thank you. Have a great one.
And you too. And for Local Issues, Real People, I'm JD Slade.
Hey, son. How are you feeling?
I'm fine, Pops.
What's on your mind?
I can't explain it. Navigating without a compass, eyes waiting, started to wonder. Metamorphosis, the loss of who you thought you was.
When your kid can't find the language,